Ping An is the most innovative financial group in China and one of the largest insurance companies in the world. When it comes to a successful ecosystem strategy, Ping An is without any doubt the worldwide best practice. We are therefore very pleased that Jonathan Larsen, Ping An's Chief Innovation Officer, will share his vision and learnings in this keynote address. Jonathan is responsible for bringing new technologies, platforms and business models to Ping An's businesses in China and internationally. He's also the chairman and CEO of the Ping An Global Voyager Fund, a $1 billion fund which invests in fintech and health tech opportunities. Please welcome Jonathan Larsen.
Good, well thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here on behalf of Ping An, and we certainly appreciate the fact that there's interest to hear about Ping An in far-flung parts of the world, including here in Germany. I've got a presentation, and what I'm going to do is give you a little background about Ping An, talk a little bit about how we see the world of innovation in the financial sector, and then I want to give you some examples of what we're doing about it as an organization, both within our company, in terms of how we're reshaping our business and creating new businesses in response to opportunities that technology and the new digital landscape is offering, but also through investment activities. So let's begin. So let me start with a very quick overview of what Ping An is all about. Ping An is a very large China-based financial institution. So many of you may have heard a few things, but as I like to say, it's probably better that you hear it from us than you hear it secondhand from various intermediaries in the marketplace. We started in the insurance business. We are a very large life insurance company, a large P&C company. We have health insurance. We're the largest health insurer in China. We're a large annuity player. Our premium income, just as an index, is about $60 billion for the first half of this year. We have a securities business. We're the largest retail broker in China. We have a very sizable asset management business, about just under $700 million in AUMs. We have a bank with a balance sheet of about $500 billion. And then on the bottom right of the chart, we have a bunch of new businesses that really come out of what we call our technology ecosystem. And I'll talk about how this has all evolved in a second. But they include companies, you might have heard of a couple of them. Lufax today is the largest digital wealth management platform in the world, has about $80 billion in client assets under management and about 20 million users. It's also a very large online lending business in China. We have a business called Ping An One Connect, which is a company that takes a lot of our internal technologies and scales them independent of our client franchise and offers them as enterprise services to other financial institutions, both in China and more recently internationally. And we have something called our financial cloud, which basically is a regulated third-party cloud environment, allowing any financial institution in China in the first instance to basically offer their services as cloud-based services. We have something called, in the health space, Ping An Good Doctor. This today is the largest telemedicine platform in the world. We listed this company in May this year, so it's about a $7 billion market cap in Hong Kong. And we have, as of our last disclosure, I think it's 232 million registered users. We can talk more about what that does later on. We have a clinic platform. So China is trying to build a large network of private clinics to provide primary care. And we have a platform that serves about 50% of those private clinics in terms of a range of enterprise services. And SHI means the state health system. That's the insurance system provided by the government that covers 50% of all medical expenditure in China. So we provide a range of services to support that system, ranging from anti-fraud over billing controls. We're now starting to work with municipalities to actuarially underwrite. Put it all together, we're a $1 trillion balance sheet company. We have about 170, 180 million financial services customers, but in our broader digital ecosystem, we have about 480 million users. So we've got quite a large pool of customers to work with. We generate a lot of revenue. So in the first half, we generated $85 billion this year. And we generated net income for the first half of $9 billion. How did this company evolve? It started 30 years ago with 3 people in a room in a place called Shenzhen, which if any of you went to China in the early days when China was opening up, Shenzhen was in a very basic state at that time. It was founded by a fellow called Peter Ma, who is the chairman and the CEO of the company today, and is really the founding visionary driving pretty much everything. And what they did was they started in the insurance business. They diversified and created this concept which was revolutionary in China called integrated finance. To this day, Ping An is still the widest range of licenses of any financial institution. And then probably fast forward to, there's a lot I could talk about the evolution of how they built the business, but fast forward to the 2007-2008 period. Most of the world was focusing on the financial crisis. Peter Ma was observing how Alibaba and Tencent had created essentially a new digital economy in China. And having built this company as a traditional set of businesses, he realized that there was an entirely new set of challenges and opportunities emerging in the digital economy. And so what he did was pivot the whole company to being a technology company. The first thing was to go all cloud, which we are. Get rid of all legacy platforms, no mainframe computers, no COBOL programs, rewrite, reinvest, purchase contemporary platforms to do everything across the company. Launch an enormous amount of R&D, automated underwriting. We've had it for 10 years, pretty much for everything we do. A lot of R&D in AI. We build our own facial recognition platforms. We build our own voice print. We take all of our calls, the 1 million calls a day that we still get, and we turn them into text and make them machine processable. We will show you some things that we do in the auto business where you use your mobile phone to scan the damage and we can offer you a claim settlement, things like that. We also created a couple of these new businesses, Lufax, Good Doctor, OneConnect. These are sizable. Lufax, at its last valuation round, was valued at just under $20 billion. I described Good Doctor briefly. OneConnect, we raised, I think it was $650 million, with SoftBank as our cornerstone at the start of this year. And there are probably 15 more companies at various stages of development sitting behind these in different sectors, building on our sort of financial and broader ecosystem. And I think the important point to grasp is the way Peter and the way the company looks at the future is we really are entering a digital economy. And the capabilities that have made us successful, we have 1.4 million insurance agents, we have a great brand, we have a lot of capital. Those things are going to become less and less relevant, and our ability to access data, to be able to create value out of data to serve client needs is going to become more relevant. So that's really powering, that insight is powering all of our strategies going forward. Let's just step back quickly. It's one thing to be a major financial institution today and an innovative one, but I think we have to recognize a lot of the innovation is being driven from outside of the financial industry, at least in its traditional sense. 30 years, 40 years ago, most innovations were basically initiated by the industry, by large players, a small number of them, and also by a small number of technology vendors. That has completely changed. Today, all of the innovation is coming really from the outside in. And we're seeing that with about $30 billion a year in investment, both VC and PE, in fintech, and a very large amount of that is coming from actually some corporate sponsorship. What does the landscape look like? It's actually increasingly distributed across the world. China is an important player, and there are 3 areas in China that have been transformed by technology. One is payments. I'm sure you all know this. Cash doesn't exist really in China anymore because of the e-wallet penetration that's happened. Secondly, the wealth intermediation industry is largely dominated by digital platforms. Thirdly, the personal lending industry likewise. We've seen similar trends in other parts of the world, and I think a very important set of trends in Europe as fintech is beginning to come of age. And we certainly see Europe as a very important source of innovation and an opportunity space for investment. When we look at the world, there's a lot of players out there. We count at least 7,500 fintechs, and we also look intensively at the digital health landscape, and we see about 7,500 coincidentally in that universe as well. It's nice to see some of our own companies up in the top. I think we've created 4 unicorns so far within our own stable of entrepreneurial efforts. You could assume, looking at these charts, and there are plenty of them, I'm sure you've seen them many times, that fintech has already solved insurance and finance more broadly. Because if you decompose finance, you can find actually pretty good companies in every segment and every component of the value chain or the activity sequence. The reality is that these companies have yet to scale. They've yet to transform. The industry is still very much dominated by large-scale legacy providers. The question is, how quickly will that change, and how will it change? And so what I wanted to do was share with you a few vectors on which we are trying to operate and where we have examples of some success in trying to transform ourselves and create new ways of addressing market opportunities. And I want to reference this with sort of you could call it a taxonomy of some of the ways in which the internet economy has proven to be transformative in the last 15 years. And these largely come, in fact, they entirely come from outside of the financial industry. One of them is redefining addressable markets. Think of the way Uber, when Travis Kalanick created the company in San Francisco, was he competing against what? Yellow cabs in San Francisco, which in fact went bankrupt finally in November last year, very quietly. I don't think so. He was actually addressing mobility for everybody everywhere, as were the guys at Airbnb. Turning data into value, that is the model of Google and Facebook. Together, they represent 66% of the global monetization of data. So they really are the examples par excellence. Redefining user experience, well, I think you need to look no further than Netflix and Spotify for completely changing a traditional set of experiences. Facilitating radical automation. I think if you look at Amazon in their warehouse infrastructure, and of course I think Toyota is probably for manufacturing innovation and automation the standout example. And then the last one is the ability to use technology to access a wide range of capabilities through ecosystems. And Salesforce, I think, is a great example, as is Android. So let's look at some examples at Ping An that are trying to do something similar. I don't think we can claim in any case to have achieved the scale of these success stories I just mentioned, but we have achieved something. The first is the healthcare, and I'll talk about our ecosystem in healthcare and how we've started with our insurance business and we've redefined our addressable market opportunity. Secondly, in the data world, there are many examples in Ping An, but one I'm going to show you is our credit scoring platform. Thirdly, user experience. We've done a lot to completely automate our user experience and eliminate paper entirely from the customer journey. So I'll show you an example of that, but we've done it across the whole business. Automation, taking something that was manually intensive and still is for all insurers, claims processing. We've got many examples, but this is a good one. And then lastly, the One Connect platform that I mentioned is quite interesting because it allows us to take capabilities that we've built to solve problems for our own customers and then to make those available as enterprise services to people that we might previously have thought of as competitors. But it also allows us to source capabilities from anywhere, put them on that platform, and enrich the offering. So let's talk about addressable markets. We think in ecosystem terms. So the organizers of this conference asked me to talk about ecosystems. At Ping An, that's really easy because that's how we think about everything. We think about the financial revenue pool. We think about the real estate revenue pool. We think about the automotive revenue pool. We think about healthcare. We think about sectors that we're not in at all today, entertainment, and an emerging sector, government services. But we think of the entire revenue pool as the opportunity space. Just to give an example, we own the largest car trading website in China. It's a company we acquired a 54% interest in about 2 years ago. It has quadrupled in value. It's a NASDAQ-listed company. It's valued at $10 billion. It's called AutoHome. And that company handles 30% of all car sales in China. It's the largest car market in the world. What we did was we took that company, and the first thing we wanted to do is find ways of embedding financial services into their offering. So for cars, the most obvious one is financing and insurance. So we're in the process of figuring out how to do that on a very large scale. And then secondly, what we wanted to do was create a data layer underneath it and be able to monetize that data for research purposes for OEMs, but also for adding value to consumers themselves. So that's an example. Let me turn to health, where we thought about this in a very different way. We're the largest health insurer, as I mentioned, but private health insurance is only 5% of the health wallet in China today. The government is 50%, the rest is out of pocket. The private piece is growing at 35%, so most people would be very happy to just chug along at 35% and see where it took them. At Ping An, the way Peter Ma thought about it was no. There is this much bigger opportunity because we know that the China health system has to transform. So the first thing was to create a telehealth platform. There is no primary care in China. You go to the hospital, you wait for half a day, you go to a lot of departments, there are no general practitioners. If you have a headache, you go to the neurologist. It's not a good system. With the onset of chronic disease, aging population, rising affluence, this thing has to change top to bottom. It cannot happen the way the West did it. They have to use technology. And this is acknowledged fully by government policymakers. So the first thing was to create Good Doctor. And that today has 230 million registered users and is the leading platform. The cooperation with the social health system. So the municipalities control the state hospitals and they distribute the government health insurance system. So simply by introducing some analytics to control over-prescription and fraud, we are able to get a 10% saving in that budget within the first year. And from there, we can work on co-insuring parts of the risk on an actuarial basis commercially. And from there, we can actually figure out to look at how we can intervene to reduce end-to-end system costs. So, for example, programs that reduce the likelihood of diabetic incidents are hugely important. China's entire per capita medical spending today is what the US spends on diabetes alone. So when you think of where this thing is going to go and the escalation of costs, they need these solutions. We have this One Clinic platform, which is an enterprise platform for doctors' clinics. And the idea is to despecialize as much as possible what the doctor has to do and provide as many digital health services as possible that can complement the doctor's expertise set and what they do with the patient. So it's a way of thinking of the whole revenue pool and then building platforms using technology and data in an intelligent way, each of which feeds into the other and addresses this much, much bigger opportunity. Let's talk about data to value. So we're a big data company. We have about 25,000 engineers in our technology group. We have about 80,000 people in technology altogether. We have a very large AI group. We build a lot of our own tools in deep learning, computer vision, and various aspects of big data. We are a cloud provider because we have 480 million of our own users. We have scale to be competitive as a third-party cloud provider. And it's nice being a regulated financial institution because we offer a cloud service that regulators have already vetted, audited, and approved. And then we have a whole bunch of capabilities that can help us provide better data services. So for example, in blockchain, we built an interbank trading platform for smaller banks, for about 400 small banks. In China, we replaced a legacy paper-based system that used to take weeks to settle with an instantaneous hyperledger platform 2 years ago. Since that time, that platform has traded over $2 trillion in value. So I think it's probably the largest blockchain exchange in the world so far. And then a lot of security-based services, obviously, just given who we are. One example I can give you of how this can not only serve our own needs, but can turn into a completely different opportunity is credit scoring. So we're the largest non-bank credit provider, personal credit provider in China. Through our Lufax platform, we have a business that is a very sophisticated online lending platform. And we figured that we had a pretty good way of overcoming many of the shortfalls in the China credit bureau system. In particular, the non-bank sector is not on the state credit bureau. So we're one of the very few places where we can aggregate sort of both the private sector and the non-bank sector with the regulated sector. Anyway, we built a great platform for ourselves, and then we figured out this thing could be scaled way beyond our own client base. And so we support over 200 banks. They include HSBC, Standard Chartered, and a bunch of other foreign players. And we've created a tremendously sophisticated capability that looks at over 6,000 decision variables. It could even be, if you can't substantiate your address, we can get you to authorize us to track you on your phone for the next day or two. And we want to see that you actually spend 5 or more hours in the place that you call your home, right? Not a bad way to validate that someone lives where they say they do. It's a very sort of interesting set of models that we have, sort of between triangulation, validation, and actual verification. And because of the scale, we think we have an accuracy and a predictive power that's about 30% better than it was when it was just addressing our own client base, which is a small fraction of the 700 million users. Redefining the user experience, so digitizing is critical for us. Even our agents, we have 1.4 million agents. They never touch a piece of paper. Their recruitment is digital. Their training is 80% digital. We do have some, of course, face-to-face. The client segmentation, lead generation, CRM is all digital. And then the client experience itself is digital as well. So we've created an app that basically guides the client through their life with Ping An across all services. So far, we have 100 million registered users, and it's transformed the way in which services are offered. So claims are settled pretty much instantly or on the same day, as opposed to a week-plus process in the past. I mentioned this briefly, radical automation. You have a prang with your car. What you do at Ping An is you take out your mobile phone, you scan the damage. We have an AI engine with every part of every car model in it. 70% of damage is superficial, and that lets us essentially validate the claim and assess it real time. And what we do is we offer the customer, as long as we're sure of our data, we offer the customer a real-time offer. So we'll say, it's going to cost you $800 US, hypothetically, to solve this problem or fix the car. You've got 2 choices. You can either come through our claims process and to our authorized repair shop, or you can take care of it yourself and we'll just credit you the money instantly into your e-wallet. And 30% of customers take the money. So that truncates the process for us and makes it more efficient for everybody. Lastly, the One Connect platform. So we have just dozens and dozens of capabilities that sit on this. And we've taken the view that the raft of smaller competitors aren't really our competitors. We started out offering mobile capabilities for consumers and for SMEs. We've graduated to the blockchain settlement platform that I mentioned. We offer a lot of the stuff that I've described. The claims management platform we offer as a third-party service for insurers. And we take the view that this is a way of extending our addressable market as well, and leveraging our capabilities way beyond our own client base, which is already extensive. And as I mentioned, what's interesting is as we start investing in and partnering with outside companies, we're able to bring together a very wide spectrum of capabilities. And we're just at the point of internationalizing this. And while Ping An is largely, almost entirely a China-based company today, we think that leading with real capabilities like this is quite an interesting way to begin internationalization. I said I would talk about our investments. So one of our investment arms is something we call the Ping An Global Voyager Fund. We started it about just over a year ago. It's a $1 billion fund. It invests in digital health and fintech on a global basis. The objective is to access capabilities for Ping An. We have deployed about $100 million of our $1 billion fund so far. And by the end of this year, we expect to be about double that number, about 200. And we're finding a range of really interesting companies. We want companies that have strong inherent growth trajectories and value trajectories, but we want companies that can be meaningful additions to Ping An's capability set as well. That could be technologies, it could be platforms, it could be business models. So that's something that we're doing. We tend to focus on minimum tickets of about $10 million, and that excludes much of the startup world. To address that world, we have an accelerator based in Shenzhen, which is a way for smaller companies to interact with Ping An, to learn about China, and we actually have a small pocket of our fund that feeds into another fund that funds those accelerator targets and partners. So how do we do it as a company overall? I think we have, as a company, a fundamental innovation mindset. I was saying to somebody earlier today, our CEO sends out a self-assessment at the start of every year. And it's basically his scorecard. And the first page is creating a permanent sense of crisis in the company. And it's his assessment of how well we're doing on that. And that includes just challenging everything that we do from the bottom up all the time. So that's part of the culture. The governance and processes, we have a lot of bottom-up initiatives. All businesses are incented to create new initiatives, whether they be entrepreneurial and new businesses, or whether they be fundamental revisions of existing activities. And we have a very simple approval process for those. We also have a lot of top-down initiatives, and senior management will be involved at a very micro level, sometimes 100 iterations into a new business or a new project. And then lastly, we have platforms like the Voyager Fund that are a source of new ideas, new contacts, and new capabilities, and a lot of R&D teams focused on different technologies, even to the extent of explicitly having technologies looking for opportunities. So blockchain would be a perfect example. We think that tokenization and blockchain can revolutionize an enormous amount of what we do. So we have teams of people, they don't know what their business application is yet, but their job is to find it. So that's really the story of Ping An. I think it's a very interesting example of a high-growth company, 29% compound growth in net income over 30 years. That means you triple every 5 years. But a company that started in traditional businesses and has migrated, fundamentally to being a technology company, and is thinking about opportunities that start with its own business but take it a long way further afield from that. And I think embracing technology and being a sophisticated developer of technology is fundamental to everything we do in this new data economy. Thank you very much indeed.